Kokina semdol kake mofaseda.
Hey everyone, thanks for coming again. Welcome to EVE Online Talking in Stations. I am Matterall, News Chief at TheMittanidotcom, and this is the Talking in Stations show where we talk about what's happening in EVE with some of the notable players. We have a great show lined up for you today. We are going to talk with our panel of experts as well as really cool guests today. We have my old FC, Progodlegend, and PL FC Killah Bee. We'll be asking them about the Great Invasion of the North. Now, that's not a name for the war. That's just a description of it. And we'll get to that in just a second. So let's go to the panel real quick, do some quick introductions, then we'll talk to our guests, and then we'll move on to the show. Ashterothi?
Hi, I'm Dreydan is recruiting and Ashterothi. No, wait, other way around. I am Ashterothi and Dreydan is in fact recruiting.
Dreydan?
Dreydan, also do a open comm show.
And you're from the Bastion.
I'm from Bastion.
It's important right now. Dirk?
Hey, what's up? It's Dirk Magirk from MPX Gaming Corp in the Bastion Alliance, also one of the co-hosts on the Open Comm show. Yeah, that's about it.
Awesome. Okay, so for guests today, we have Progodlegend, who is from he's Mild FC from NoizyGamer, and we have Killah Bee as well, also from NoizyGamer in the later years. This is a real treat for me to be able to talk to these guys for actually the first time. Actually, Killah Bee and I talked before. Progod, tell us about yourself.
What, just like as an FC, or?
Oh, tell us where you're from right now and everything.
I am happily enjoying myself in Test Alliance, actually, in Dreydan Corporation. I am really enjoying it. It's been a good time. And Test is becoming a really good alliance.
Are you heavily involved in this campaign?
Yeah, Villy and I are co-campaign leading. And working with Villy is really easy, so we're actually doing a good job of splitting the work up. But Test has a ton of FCs that are coming up, and I've lately taken a step back so much from FCing directly and been handing more fleets off. We're getting a lot of junior FCs up as well. It's just generally running pretty well. That's
awesome. Killah Bee, you're from PL now, but you were also ex-Nully. How's it going?
Yeah, so you pretty much explained what I am. Been in Nully, now in PL, and kind of the campaign commander for PL in this entire war.
That's awesome. You guys ever crossfire each other? Accidentally kill each other?
We accidentally dropped Progod's move up when they moved in to start the war, but that's about it.
I got so fucking salty about that.
Fine.
Alright. Well, let's get started. The first part of the show, we're going to talk about the war, of course. We want to get updates on where we are with it, where the invasion is. And then, actually, I want to talk to these guys about some history as well. So let's get started with... can you bring us up to speed on where we are? Like, tell people, like, where, what the map looks like and stuff?
Cutting out, bro.
I am? Sorry. Can you get us up to speed on the where we are with this campaign?
Killah, you're probably better suited for that.
I mean, if he's fine with that, I can do it.
Go for it, yeah.
So, we've had some unexpected fast success in pushing the CFC back into where they are right now. So we've been since C2 flipped sides pretty much. We've moved on from Tribute with Pandemic Legion to Pure Blind, which is pretty much in between the low 6 staging of the CFC and Saranen and their homelands and Decline or whatever. And we're just like moved in between them, and we're trying to disrupt them on their operations pretty much, right? And yeah, we're pretty much done in Veil of the Silent and in Tribute, because that's now blue. Branch and Tina are completely empty as well. So right now, what we're looking at is obviously Decline, right? So that's pretty much where we are. We haven't had any major fights since MTech O, I guess. MTech O was the last big kind of brawl that everybody noticed because it was like an insane amount of
Well,
people
we
there.
formed up big for UQ9. There was just no engagement.
Yeah, there was no real engagement for that, right? That's right. It was actually a couple of days after that, right? Yeah, you're right. So UQ9 was the latest big form up, but there was no real big engagement since then. We've had a couple smaller skirmishes and brawls or whatever since then, but it's all been fairly quiet if you look on the like super large coalition scale.
So this war has been really a measure of two big engagements that happened, and since then it's been kind of just like a lot of small stuff, right? There were really two big battles.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we had the 2DW battle at the beginning, where over the CSA of Lawn and the staging system at that time, and then we had the big battle in MTECO over the iHub of CO2 staging system at that time. So those were like the two major battles, and since then it's been basically just fishing and hunting. It's like less a front on front war at this point. It's like more like we as PL are just having the time of our lives, right? Trying like catching all these supers and titans and caps, trying to escape out of the north. It's just great. It's awesome.
Is it better than beating up Brave when they're trying to get out?
I wasn't there for that, but I mean, people like Graf say that Brave put up more of a fight than the CFC is right now. So
Not going to get an argument out of me on that.
Yeah.
It's a different kind of war, but yeah.
Which of those?
I mean,
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just wondering, of those two fights, like they each represented a different moment. The first one seemed like it was the first time that people got like the idea that you could actually outblob the Imperium. And then the next time the Imperium stepped it up, they brought 1,200 that would have matched the fight before's 1,200, but we brought, because I'm an NC, 2,400. And that seemed to really break them. Well, then CO2 broke off, and that really... So which of those two was most important?
I mean, I was kind of shocked they let that break them, because I don't think we could have pulled off 3,000 again. I mean, the numbers we had from every alliance was pretty fucking incredible. I mean, Test had 450 people, and then Darkness and their coalition had 400 people, and you know that's almost 1,000 people just from Test and Darkness and allies.
Yeah. Well, I think when VFK was under attack and the station next to it, it seemed like everybody was hoping that was going to be the next big one, and that just didn't happen. That fizzled.
Well, yeah, the thing was VFK and UQ9 came out at the same time, and we were much more interested in headshotting FCON and Branch if we could, because if we headshotted FCON, I mean, that basically was the last, confident CFC alliance in defense of their space, since TNT and SMA were kind of already broken as well.
Yeah, it's worth noting that it was CO2 that actually originally did the reinforcement, and then most of the force that actually ended up going to VFK was, I think, Spectre Fleet, because they weren't on the same memo as everybody else.
I think it was either CO2 or I think it was actually some Test dudes who were just wanted to RF VFK, and so they formed a fleet for it.
It was just after CO2 left the alliance. They posted on Reddit. It was like CO2 and VFK, and it was them reinforcing VFK.
Yeah. The thing about VFK is there's like zero strategic value, which is why we never even thought about going for VFK. Like everybody keeps babbling about like, oh, VFK, blah blah blah, but it's just for Reddit posting, and I don't know, like nobody actually cares about VFK, I guess.
Yeah,
a bunch
of test guys made a bunch of propaganda like we're going to VFK and shit, and
yeah.
I think it may have even actually worked as like a false flag thing, but I doubt it. I mean, they knew we were going UQ9.
Well, ProGod, weren't you supposed to be there like in 2012?
What, the Fountain War?
Yeah, the Fountain War.
VFK by
Yeah,
May.
the Fountain War was fucking winnable. It definitely was winnable. Yeah, it was 2013, I think, or whatever. No, it was 2012, right? Damn.
Yeah, I remember you saying, giving this rousing speech where you were very good at, and it was like, come on, you guys, this is what it's all about. This entire thing is about this moment.
Yeah, I mean, I thought if we could rally all our numbers, and honestly, Test at the time, we thought... Well, I mean, we just made a miscalculation. We saw Test putting up 1,000 dudes in one SMEB, against PL and NC Dot, and we were like, holy shit, if we could just get half that, if we could just get 500 from them consistently, we can win a war against CFC. Like, we'll actually outnumber them. Like, our plan was the same one we're using right now, to actually bring more numbers in CFC and just break that advantage. It's just the numbers weren't there when we went to the Fountain.
Yeah, I want to compare these two wars a little bit later, so we'll come back to that. But as for this conflict, has it been much of a war? I think, Dirk, you usually say, like, it's an invasion, it's not even a war.
Well,
Massacre.
look, I say it tongue-in-cheek, right? Because, I mean, obviously it is a war, and it's probably going to go on in some other phase after all of this, what we're seeing in the Northwest right now is kind of complete, right? I say it tongue-in-cheek that it's not really a war because really there's only one side who is stepping up to fight. So if you only got one side that's stepping up to fight, it doesn't really fall, to me, into a war category. It falls into a steamroll massacre on the way to an atrocity that'll get brought up at The Hague later on, and yeah.
Well, you don't know how this would have played out in Dominion. I mean, for all we know, under Dominion mechanics, this could have been another Halloween war on the other side, where it was just a 3 or 4 or 5 month grind. So I'm not going to sit here and say that CFC definitely, are like dropping the ball compared to previous wars. You really can't compare this war to any previous wars. We really don't know. Maybe this is how every war will work out in FozzieSov once one side gains number superiority, where it's just a total steam. I mean, you really just don't know.
Yeah,
Well,
I totally agree that under the old system, this would have been very much different. Yeah.
Killah, you're saying something?
Yeah, I'm saying like what we're doing right now. I mean, there's some FozzieSov wars before this where the Russians in the east, right, and then obviously all these smaller entities. And there's a lot of stuff happening in Fountain. It's a lot of stuff happening in Delft that is like kind of utilizing the FozzieSov mechanics, right? But like on a huge coalition scale, this is the first real FozzieSov war that we're having that isn't the Russians, I guess, if you want to count those in. So it is like a lot of new stuff, and I totally agree that in Dominion this would have been an entire different story. Right now, the way it plays out, I don't know if we would call it a war.
I still think we would have broken Vale off the same way, because there's no way their capitals could have. If this is Dominion, we'd be dropping capitals every fight, and we would just move our capitals around and bite at the edges.
Yeah.
But taking Pureblind and Declan, and maybe CO2 doesn't flip in that situation because Tribute's pretty safe too. It's a whole different story, definitely.
Well, you also have to understand it's pretty proportionate. Like, I mean, even with the updates, they were supposed to be the stronger team. They should have been able to, even with this Fonzie or whatever it's called, FozzieSov. What's it called?
Yeah, FozzieSov.
I've noticed that. I noticed Matani call it FizzleSov because he doesn't like it for whatever reason, which I think is weird, because I was actually on the meta show twice where the Matani and I and Laz just talked up. Laz not so much. Laz didn't like it, but Matani and I thought FozzieSov was a great idea. And you got to remember, FozzieSov is occupancy Sov, which Matani and all the CFC were pushing for more than anything because they thought it would give them a huge advantage.
Yeah, I remember.
You're roboting.
It had been one of the speeches he was giving down in somewhere else, but he was mentioning that this type of new solve system is going to benefit the CFC or the Imperium. So
yeah, I wouldn't blame the update to the solve system, because honestly, everybody has that same advantage after the update. Let me
just bring you in. That is Eep from IWANTISK. He was the original funder of the war against SMA, and later on we're going to talk about his new announcement, which is he's extending the war onto Goonswarm as well. But let's introduce him into the conversation.
Yeah, well, not only that, I also was told by the other funders that they are now ready to be revealed, so there should be a new
you want to reveal them right now?
Well, yeah, I could reveal them right now. Yeah,
let's do it.
There'll be more information about it in an article, of course.
Oh man!
So who's behind this war?
Well, I don't think the funders are behind the war. At least I'm not behind it. Like, I was just presented.
I mean, on the one side we have generals over here, but who are the financiers of the war?
Okay, there's 3. All 3 are bankers from IWANTISK. one being Nigerian banker prince, whom is also Lenny Kravitz too.
Is that
second-
Lenny? Is that?
Yeah, that's Lenny. That's Lenny.
Oh,
Yep,
dude,
yes.
he's a beast. He's a beast.
And then Iron Bank.
For everyone listening, hold on. This war doesn't happen without the money. Like, not even close. So these are the people right here.
The second person was Isk Iron Bank, also known as Iron Bank on Twitch, or One Run Bank, and I as well. So the agreement was to fund a total between the three of us of 9 trillion Isk. But as you will learn in the article, probably the funding had to surpass that. It was just pretty. Yeah, it was fun, honestly.
So this war has cost more than 9 trillion.
Yeah, more than 9 trillion, more than 10. You can put it. Yeah.
So what's funny about that?
I mean,
was,
has it cost? I mean, it costs you that, but I mean, has it really cost that? When and I forget who it was. Was it Progodlegend that said without the funding, this war doesn't happen? Is that because the costs of fighting this war, even until now, required it, or just people needed the incentive to be paid?
It may be
To
the
like
incentive,
get it
yeah.
all together.
Yeah.
It was the incentive. It gave a lot of the alliances reason to go like, all right, we're not sure this will work, but we'll check it out for a price.
Like a lot of the alliances
And-
wouldn't be on board if the money wouldn't have streamed in. But what's really important to notice, what like we've been asked a couple of times, and what we already answered that a couple of times. Like at this point of the war, at this stage of the war, we all see,
Oh,
like,
of
we're all
course,
we're
yeah,
all
we'd
committed
still
that
be in
far
it.
that if the money would drop right now for whatever reason, it wouldn't matter anymore because like the money was a nice catalyst to get groups that weren't sure it was going to work or something to at least try it, right? And then we managed with the trying, we managed to actually get something together. But like at this point, everybody is definitely aware of that we can do this, so nobody's gonna leave.
Not only that, at this point, Money Badgers is a well-oiled machine. Like, we're not technically a coalition, but I mean, N3 and PL were once together in a coalition, and this thing works much more smoothly than that ever did. I mean, this is by far the most well-organized effort we've ever put together as far as these alliances that are usually, not friendly, but kind of band together every now and then type thing.
Is that an outcropping of the new sovereignty system? Because
No,
you do not
that is
have to
literally
focus on a
Discord.
specific target.
It's because Discord is
Okay.
so fucking easy to use. It's really the only reason. Like,
Discord is a software that's used by gamers to communicate with audio and also text.
Not
like
a
this
sponsor.
shit never used to work when we had to make everyone register for each other's Jabber services and all this stuff, and then you're always like dealing with auth issues. Now we just put all the FCs on Discord and bam, like everything works easy.
Actually, I want to use Discord so we can take questions. People can actually ask their questions instead of typing them up. But we'll get to that later. That's
I hope
awesome.
Discord
So
pays me because I'll sit there and pump Discord.
I mean, because, and the reason I ask that is because with the Age of Sovereignty system, right? It would seem that you don't need the level of coordination amongst all of the entities on one side or another.
Well, what we don't need,
much more top down.
What it does help is we don't. So it does two things that really help a coalition like us out, and actually hurts the CFC. And it is one of their biggest problems. Because we're all independent alliances, we can all act independently. In Aegis Sov, that is so much more useful than it was in Dominion. Sure, in Dominion, if you're, especially before Phoebe, if your coalition owned enough space, then we could attack from 3 different sides and pressure you. But before Phoebe, Slowcats could be anywhere in 5-10 minutes, so that wasn't really a big deal. And it eventually, because of the way capitals work, you couldn't really split up your groups and have them be effective that as much as you kind of want to. So it mattered before Dominion, but now it really matters, and that helps us out a lot. And I mean, besides the whole independent thing, we don't need to have joint fleets anymore, which is another big thing the CFC always had a huge advantage on. So because the fights are spread out over multiple systems, there's benefit to leaving everyone in their own alliance's fleet. And every alliance works much better when they're working by themselves than in a loose-formed coalition.
Would you say that in previous soft systems that it would have made that same difference?
No, and this is actually one of our big problems in in the Fountain War is that we were keeping our alliances split and putting together fleets that would top out at like 170 to 200. And the Goons always had 250 dudes in their fleet, and they'd end up bringing a lot more firepower than we did. We bring 3 fleets of like 180, and they bring 3 fleets of 250, essentially.
You don't think that with previous Sov mechanics that an alliance could have split their groups up if they did it more strategically? They would have been able to.
I mean, I'm not saying they couldn't have done it. We couldn't have made it work. I'm just saying there's definitely more benefits to being a coalition of independent alliances under the new Sov system than there was in Dominion.
So, Eep, did you pay for Discord?
No, I don't even know what that is. Oh, Discord. I think I heard about that.
Yeah.
It's like an interface on a browser.
Yeah, it's like Slack, but with Mumble, or with like a Mumble attached to it as well.
I think that's brilliant because, the game has evolved, so warfare in the game has evolved because the technology outside the game has evolved. And it's just amazing.
It's pretty interesting. Discord makes it super easy. I mean, Killah, you've been on some of the other wars. This is definitely different.
Yeah, I mean...
Well, let's talk about that, though.
By Discord to make commercial for them.
Yeah.
It feels like it, but yeah, just to kind of finish this up, Discord's definitely a big part of why, it's just so easy to have all the people in one channel. You have one channel with all the FCs. You have one channel with the head FCs, I guess you could say. And whenever you need something, whenever something's going down, you don't need to coordinate some random TeamSpeak or Mumble that everybody needs to connect to. You just be like, yo, everybody hop on this comms channel on this Discord server that everybody's on already anyways, right? They just all hop on it within a couple seconds and we can coordinate, we can talk. It's just so much easier than to set up a coalition Jabba or IRC or whatever you want to use, right? Or comms or whatever. It's just great.
So what else is it besides being able to communicate?
Are
there
in
key
general,
people?
why the coalition is having success?
Yeah.
I agree with Progod. The biggest part is that every part of the coalition is doing an awesome job as an independent group because they already know, PL members obviously enjoy the most being FC'd by a PLFC because the PLFC knows what the PL members want and all that, right? If you have to form up a coalition fleet and then some NC guy has to is FCing the coalition fleet, some people are going to be unhappy about it. So what Progod said is right. Every alliance always works the best when they work on their own level, right? Because Test has a very different style of approaching fleets than PL does or that Darkness has or whatever, right? So the great part is that in this soft system and in this war, we all actually managed to approach this war the way it is best for our specific alliance, and we still managed to achieve coalition goals, kind of, while everybody achieving that goal on their own way, right? And that's just it's just awesome because everybody's having fun, because everybody's playing the game, they want to play it, and we're accomplishing stuff with it.
Well, that's go ahead.
I was just going to say that what's very interesting for me is I thought I left faction warfare, and actually what I see in the Money Badgers is very reminiscent of what I saw in the Galente militia back when we were doing our major pushes for, full control of the war zone and whatnot, where kind of we have a unified vision. We all know where we want to go to, and we all kind of know our responsibilities and just kind of trust that the other people will do it. And, oh, look, it's working. It's a weird way of putting it. But, Fozzie Sov or Aegis Sov or what I like to call it, Entosis Sov, matches a lot of the mechanics of faction warfare. So it actually kind of makes sense that the hodgepodge coalition that would execute it might start functioning a little bit more like the militias do.
Well, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Because I do want to ask the question that the coalition of alliances working out better for this sovereignty. I see that on the attacker side. I don't know if it holds from the defensive side. I mean, this sovereignty system is, it can very much be a nightmare for Sov holders and defenders in that regard. And I'm not. This has nothing to do with the Fizzle Sov comments or anything like that. But there is that whole thing of only the alliance that owns that particular piece of space can put the Entosis link on to defend.
That's totally fine.
Everybody else.
That's not
is
a big
attacker.
deal. That's not a big deal. But we could handle that easily. Basically, if you're the home alliance, then you field mostly because of the way FozzieSov works in these large-scale wars, like, you always need almost full fleet that is totally responsible for defending Entosa's ships.
Yep.
At this scale. So we would handle that so easily by just saying the Home Alliance, we always have, as the attackers even, one fleet dedicated to Entosa's stuff. We usually just dedicate an alliance to it. So we just tell the Home Alliance, you're responsible for fielding like 40 Entosa ships and the rest of the anti-support shit that we usually put on all the Entosa nodes. And they would do it, and then the rest of us would show up and do the thing we do anyway, patrol. What I think the problem you're seeing on the defensive side is they don't know how to approach defensive Entosa's ops at this scale. And I think a lot of that has to do with some of the talent they've lost in the theory crafting and just upper echelon levels of their command structure. They don't have the same kind of creativity or ability to quickly react to some of the stuff that's going on. The fact that they thought that they could sit in Saranin and defend space all the way out in the deep edges of Branch and Vale when we have form-up systems in between their space and Saranin is ridiculous. And I can't believe they even thought that was a possibility that would have worked. Even if we didn't win in 2DW, they would have eventually had to seed Vale and launch it.
There's no question.
Bastion would have been fucked.
Yeah. There's no question that Vale would have had to have been seeded. Probably Tenal as well. At some point, it would have had to have contracted back to have a workable front.
Yeah, in fact, I'm just going to simplify that. Let's not just say here, just because CFC lost, that playing defense in FozzieSov is too hard. I mean, that's ridiculous. You never saw us come out and say that playing defense at Dominion Sov was too hard, and that's why we keep losing these wars.
But didn't Fozzie come out and say, though, that he was going to look at Sov again and there would be adjustments if needed?
Of course. Yeah, definitely. And I hope there is. There's definitely some things that need to be fixed, but let's not sit here and say, like, oh, the reason this war is going so well for us and poorly for them is because the FozzieSov is too hard to play defense on.
But do you think it's the numbers?
It's too hard to... Yeah, I'm not saying that it's too hard to play defense on. I'm just saying that I think from an attacker's standpoint, it's a bit easier. With the Dominion sovereignty system before, because
it was
things
always
happened
easier
at a certain...
for the attackers. No, Dominion Sov was easier for the attackers too. You just don't realize it. The attackers are always going to have the advantage, not because of these little mechanics, but because the defenders have to always fucking respond. And it's the same thing in Dominion and FozzieSov. FozzieSov, it might punish you a little quicker, but like, and this is, the Goons haven't fought a real defensive war in 6 years, since 2010. Yeah. They just aren't used to the kind of tactics. And you see what's going on. How many times have Goons mocked everyone that they've invaded and been in an offensive war for saying all the stuff that Goons are saying right now? Wolf packs, we didn't want that space anyway, they're not winning fast enough. Everything that Goons used to mock people for doing, they're doing. They're going through the exact same thought process. Guess what? Anyone who gets blobbed goes through. It's nothing special. It's just the only fucking option you have when you're getting blobbed. Everyone does it. But Goons used to mock people for it, and here they are doing the same shit.
Yeah, it's interesting because the opposite is true as well, Progod. At least from what I'm hearing is that, yeah, we're getting out blobbed, basically. So people who are complaining about everybody being blue are now completely blue to each other.
Yeah. The difference is we plan to break up as soon as this thing's over.
Ah, interesting. Political difference. You're not going to maintain this and create a new Imperium?
Hell no. We can barely maintain standings now as it is.
You know, in the end, if they would have defended all those huge fleets that came their way, then they would have had to worry about the new Sov mechanics.
Let me ask that. We're starting to move into a different section, which I was wanting to explore anyway. Is sovereignty? What's it going to look like after all this? Is anybody going to have Sov?
Dark Ages.
Yeah. I mean, there are tons of people who have sovereign. So what it's going to look like eventually is more like Fountain and Delve and Quarius and Scalding Pass look like right now. It's going to become more factions spread out. And the game really needs this. The game needs alliances and organizations to get smaller on average, or more. They need the median alliance size to move down. Let's say use median instead of average. But I mean, there's still going to be a room for big alliances, and there's still going to be room for a couple of decent-sized coalitions. I mean, Ex-Death and his coalition owns a ton of space. The Southern Russians own a ton of space, as much space as the CFC did at this point. So it's gonna. There's still going to be room for coalitions, but the median alliance size needs to come down, and barrier of entry to 0-0 needs to come down for this game to survive and for this game to grow. So that's the design goal of FozzieSov, and it's having a good effect. And as you can see, big wars can still happen.
Yeah, I find that the... Oh, sorry.
Oh, sorry. I was just gonna ask real quick. So, and it's been mentioned before. Like once, I mean, if the CFC or the Imperium loses all the space up north, and then you guys say that you're planning on breaking up, I'm assuming a couple groups will stay and keep the SOV up here that they've taken.
No, just wait for it to happen.
That's
Wait for it to
classified.
happen.
That's classified.
Well, okay, well, I was just gonna say. I
The
mean,
Bastion guy wants to know.
Obviously, the intention would be that Imperium tries to take the space back. Is there any kind of plans in place to prevent them from getting it back?
Yes, we're obviously not gonna.
Yeah, you take that one.
Yeah, we're obviously not gonna push the CSC out of all their space and then just be like, oh well, now we've done that. Let's move on or some shit. We're obviously trying to get entities into place that can, defend, at least live in the space and defend it as good as they can, and we'll see what happens, right?
So what do we end up with then? Do we end up with an Imperium do we end up with another, what will still be a sizable major power in the game?
I don't see that happening.
That is also choosing to not be a null resident anymore and just be an attacker of null?
You're talking about are the Imperium going to become another PL or NC dot?
Yeah. Everybody else who's chosen, you know what? I don't want to own sovereignty under this system.
I think if the Goonswar core stays together, and it looks like they're going to have a pretty sizable group still together, and they're willing to finance the same systems, the same SRP systems that they have right now, they could potentially do it. I don't know. I think Goons have created an alliance that needs SOV, and that's an issue.
Yeah, I'll just say that the Imperium, I don't think, can continue to exist without SOV, because you are not an empire if you do not have space.
Well, no, not only that, it's just so much of what they built the coalition up to be full of is players who, I mean, for lack of a better term, Care Bears that need SOV. I mean, that's what they do.
Well, there is an element. I want to call it almost a core belief, within the Imperium that they are a SOV holding group, right? They believe in living in nullsec, and owning sovereignty. So that if they're not going to own sovereignty, you're going to have various elements of it that are like, well, this isn't our thing.
Well, a lot of their
go away,
corporations,
right?
a lot of their corporations that join to be in 0-0 SOV holding alliances are going to leave for other 0-0 SOV holding alliances. This always happens.
Yep.
I mean, this could have even happened to Nully. Nully couldn't live away from SOV because we built the alliance with a bunch of SOV holding corporations that wanted to be in SOV. I mean, they were pretty good corporations, but they still wanted to be in SOV, most of them.
There was, I think, when discussions were going on about how to improve sovereignty and to get things going, because things had kind of slowed down, people were saying, hey, no SOV. Let's just have, that whole place be outlaw space. Nobody can really have it. That's essentially what we're getting, isn't it?
Well, this goes back to what they were being said earlier. Like, what we're going to see is kind of the exact things that we asked for in the before times, so the main goals of a new sovereignty system was to kill power projection because it was seen as being too, being omnipresent in EVE was just too powerful. And also the main complaint was that there were no smaller states. There were no smaller actors. You must be this tall to ride the ride. And if you didn't have that, you were not a nullsec alliance, because if you did not have that much kick, then one of the other groups were just going to wipe you off for funsies. And
the barrier to entry was
ridiculous.
Too high for some people.
It was killing the game. It was literally what was killing the game.
The way I put it was there was no Luxembourgs.
Well, the problem with the Dominion SOV is what it is. And exactly. We use city-states a lot on the CSM when we were talking about this. But the problem with that, or Dominion SOV, where it slowly dwindled down to two coalitions of large alliances, is it got to the point to where you couldn't really start an EVE Alliance unless you had already done one and kind of knew how it like worked, which made the turnover rate for alliances was extremely low. And what happened was no content creators came back up because you had to know how to create content in the meta, which was any capital fleet could be dropped on you anywhere in a war. You couldn't just like break off from M3 or CFC and then be independent. You'd eventually get crushed. So you had to like know how to operate within this huge, always-on block warfare, could happen type thing. And there was a dwindling number of people who knew how to play it because the meta kept moving on, but less and less alliances kept surviving through it. If that makes sense, and it's kind of weird.
Explain that whole thing again. No, I'm just kidding. Hey, Killah Bee, I want to know what it's like for you, because this is really your first giant campaign where you're getting your name, put out there a lot more. You came out of Nully and you went into PL not that long ago, and you're running the entire thing on one of the major players in this war.
I mean, yeah, it's
actually the former Nully FC team is all over the major players in this war with Nidaspar leading NC Dot.
And Nully's kind of come back, hasn't it?
Violence. Yeah, Canaris took a bunch of the corps and started a thing, and I got an alt over there, and yeah, they still do some stuff. It's just a different structure.
It's pretty amazing because when I started to play EVE, and it was like back in, the first major war I was involved in was probably the Tribute War, I think. And
was that with Dot Bros?
Yeah, exactly, with Dot Bros and stuff like that. So, and I always looked when I remember I was a little F1 pusher back in the day, and I like always looked up to these FCs and people that were like doing all this, and I was like, oh, where do I get all this information from? Why did you know what the enemy's forming and stuff like that, right?
Is Progod a mentor to you then? Because he was FCing at that time.
I was in Black Legion back in the day, so I was like FC'd by Elo all day long. But I think I might have been on some Progod fleets, I guess. I can't remember.
By the time Killah was FCing in Nully, I'd almost stopped playing. But yeah, no, I was there for a few of them at the beginning. Nidaspar helped a lot, Canaris helped a lot. Yeah, it was a whole thing.
A lot of people shaped me that way, I guess. But yeah, it's exactly what I wanted to do, where I wanted to be. And that's why I'm so eager to do this, and why I'm having so much fun doing this. It's incredible to see, like the amount of intel you have is actually insane. Pretty much know everything that the enemy does. Well, if you work together with this many groups, right? You share your intel and stuff like that. That's really cool. And just being able to, like hang in Discord, and be like, yo, all right, everybody form up a fleet. We need backup, or we need to win this timer. And within 30 minutes, you have 6 different groups with each having, 50 to 100 dudes ready to go. It's just so much fun coordinating these. Obviously, sometimes it's annoying, people don't know what they're supposed to do, or when stuff's going wrong. But that's just what it is, right? Stuff needs to go wrong at some point. Can't always win.
Was it tough to step up into a campaign this size? Did you even know it was going to get this big when it started?
Yeah, I knew it was going to happen, and no, I didn't. Like, I don't think it was tough at all. I just felt like there was no other FC in PL that was willing to commit to it, and I was already really active at the time this whole thing started, because I did most of the stuff in EUTZ and PL. So I figured, all right, well, I'm a student, I have plenty of time, so I'm just going to do this. I'm going to give it a shot, and yeah, it turned out really nice, and I'm really happy. Took me about 2 weeks to get the full support of the PL leadership, right? Everybody was at the beginning.
Do you have anybody doubt you?
There's always people doubting you when you say, oh, I'm going to go and invade the CFC. That's the thing. Like, they built up this reputation since BTEC-R where everybody thought they would be invincible. And whenever a plan came up where somebody was like, oh, let's go invade or attack the CFC, everybody would just be like, well, what are you even suggesting here, right? So obviously, when I came up with this and was like, oh, guys, I'm going to go deploy to Akora with PL, and I'm going to start hitting Veil of the Silent. Obviously, people were looking weird, but 2DW turned it all around. Like, after 2DW, all the people that were having any kind of doubts were suddenly fully supporting me. Tons of old guard people from PL started to resub. Everybody get back to the game, and now it's just, now everybody has my back. Yeah, I think that's fair.
Go ahead, Ash.
I was going to say, back when Eep was talking about it, it was kind of funny, the actual numbers, because during this war, one of the things that popped up on Reddit was actually a reference to a post on Reddit literally a year ago, where the question was asked, if you were to try to just throw money at the problem and destroy the goons, how much money would it take? And the general consensus of that Reddit thread was that there was just no amount of money, that it didn't matter, and that ISK wasn't important, and so, whatever.
No,
and so
I think I saw some like 10, 15 trillions. I mean, I know the number was talked about, by the way, long before November, when this whole Kickstarter thing talked off of like how much money it would take. The coalition almost came together a couple times right at the end of Dominion. It like barely missed. Phoebe coming in actually hurt it a good bit. But yeah,
so how long? Let that Reddit thread
there's been grumbling. I think the grumbling has been going on for a while of like, if we could just put together enough funding, we could pull it off, because then we'd be able to hire the people we needed that may have been skeptical.
So this has been kind of like in everybody's.
The idea of like putting everyone on Merc contracts from a funder, or just getting a bunch of money together, has been floating around for a couple of years.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
But I mean, I don't think anyone ever thought like, let's go ask the IWANTISK people. No, that was definitely their own idea.
It only took one casino.
That was their own idea. But when they came to people with the idea, I think they were a lot more receptive to it because it had been considered before.
Well, Eep,
That's crazy.
Eep, that moment where you were like, okay, forget these guys. I'm gonna put some money towards this, and they were basically laughing at you, saying like, you can't hurt us. We're in nullsec.
Yeah. So basically, these plans were presented, and we were like, well, why not? There's all this scarce. Why not be a part of some big change, possibly? It was in the hopes that it would actually work out, and it seems to be that way.
So when you were approached, did they say, look, it's SMA today, it's Goon Swarm tomorrow?
Yeah, sort of. So I was looking for somebody to help me attack SMA, and one of the bankers had all these connections and said, hey, we could use your attack on SMA as a distraction. And effectively, it did actually distract and made people think that the attack was only on SMA, but in fact, they were surrounding a lot of the regions that were important.
So if X River had eaten those candy dicks on a stream, it wouldn't have ended the war.
Actually, yes. The only reason I made the demands was after the point where that momentum was irreversible. So if he had eaten those on stream, the attacks on SMA would have stopped. As for the goons, that was a whole different.
But your money wouldn't have been involved in that.
In what? In the goons?
Yeah.
Yeah. After SMA, if they would have dropped off, I would have continued with the goons as well. Because it's fun.
So the goal from the very beginning has always been to continue the funding to the war on goons.
Correct. Yes, from the beginning. It was always from the beginning. Even right when SMA's war was starting, it was SMA and then goons. So from the beginning, from when SMA first started fighting back, the plans were for the goons.
That's interesting. That's new information, by the way.
Yeah, it's two birds, one stone.
Well, I mean, if you listen to some of the others out there who kind of talked about how long the discussions related to bringing this all together have been kind of happening, it would seem to say that it was probably always the intention of bringing it together for this, right? And that the money was going to be there for it. I mean, it's all well and good to sit there and put up some money to destroy SMA. It's a whole nother thing if you can actually get enough people together to take out the whole.
Yeah, I think there's been among the elite PvP alliances, the ones that were around for a while, the ones that ran in 3. There's always been that wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Like if a real opportunity ever does come to kill CFC, we'll probably do it.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, it was always a hope for Penny out there, right? I mean.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think that the finances did more than just provide finances. It provided the whole psychology that everybody should come together for one cause.
I think the finances were a huge thing. I mean, I think you guys weren't just pivotal. It doesn't happen without y'all.
Well, I think he eliminated the risk, the huge risk, and after the risk was gone for the initial strikes, then the momentum could take off. I think Killah Bee made that point earlier.
Well,
there's an amazing psychology to it.
Sorry. Well, I gotta ask, because this is Eep. Are you a former 0-0 like big alliance leadership guy from somewhere?
Yeah, I used to lead the Kanor. I was a rune thrace, so yeah, I did have null sex space, and we only had like 2 solar systems, but we defended the shit out of those systems.
Well, yeah, but like when was that?
Oh man, 3 to
I'm
5
asking
years ago.
because 3 to 5 years ago, it's still a small line. What about Ironbank and Lenny?
Lenny's been everywhere in the game.
Right.
Lenny, let me just intersect that Lenny was very well known as the financier that financed Brave while they were in catch.
Right, but still, so the point I'm making is, and I want everyone to, I think this is important to realize, is 3 people who are not like in that elite circle of big name FCs and big name alliance leaders. They got all the hype and like these are the people that control the game type thing. 3 people with just a bunch of money came together and like came up with the idea to, you know, get a bunch of people together and kill a major 0-0 coalition. That's like the most Eve thing that's ever happened in my 9 or 10 years playing. That is the most sandboxy shit. That is really awesome.
I'd have to say that most of the credit there has to go to Lenny Kravitz too, because he's the one that had all the connections and was able to distribute the funds. So he distributed the funds. He was the broker.
Well, that's incredible.
So my question is, Matterall, were you right?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, he was right.
He was
I was right a while ago, but Eep wouldn't confirm it. He would just giggle.
So here's my actual question. Like, so if all of this was planned for so long, like the Mittani famously went after Content Ring because he heard whispers of this grand coming together happening. Was he right, or
So
was
when you
he
say
just
all
like
this, you're talking
strangely
about-
wrong?
So when you say all this for long, you're talking about just like the 5 months up to the Kickstarter? Because I don't think this thing really started until the SMA's theft and the Kickstarter.
Right. So so after the Kickstarter, he invaded Cloud Ring because of the posts on Reddit, and we all laughed at him because he was tricked into attacking. And the idea was that all of these entities were coming together to take on the Imperium. That was his narrative. But this makes it sound like he was either right or
right about the wrong thing.
Yeah, or
Exactly.
or right in the
That's-
wrong way.
That's exactly what it is. I mean, obviously, you know, there's he can say he can tell his part or the way he thinks it is, and I'm gonna tell the part that it actually was like. So, like the Cloud Ring thing that he heard of was a group of different people, which is a group mainly focused around Horde, which are actually active in this war as well, which is groups like Horde, Brave, PFR, these kind of groups were those guys that, you know, were kind of on the table on that one, I guess. But the coalition that we have right now is not the same group that he heard the rumors about. It's a different group.
It sounds like in his paranoia about this trick group, he actually gave the real group the ammunition that they needed in order to do the job.
No,
Everything
that's what
backfired.
happened. So
Everything.
that's what happened when he did the whole. So Gobbin's thing was fake, like Killah Bee said. But when he did that whole spiel and he false fired on that war, everyone's like, "Wow, we have an opportunity here to build something," because he can't say it again, right? He can't cry wolf twice so quickly. He has to wait. So I think that definitely gave people the idea that this gives us some time to actually build something. And then when the contracts started coming around for the SMA thing, that's when it really kicked into gear.
Well, not just that though, because like after that he kicked around Losec and just he systematically made sure that everybody that wasn't already just like super pissed off at him was now, and then this whole thing kicked off.
Yeah, and I think, you know, that's the Kickstarter, that's the Losec thing. They basically went through 2 months where they gave people, they pissed people off so much that if someone random came around like, hey, we want to put you on the contract to shoot goons, they would go like, you know what, fuck it, we are that pissed off, let's go fucking do it.
For free.
That's why I wish this had been called the Community War and the Community Coalition, because pretty much there were a number of what I would consider to be political missteps that occurred on multiple levels that aligned.
It's
literally
definitely the
everybody.
worst. It's definitely the worst I've ever seen the CFC play the meta, and obviously that's not saying a lot because they always play the meta really well. So I mean, it's not saying they made super egregious mistakes like constantly, but they definitely made some very big mistakes that are uncharacteristic.
Although if they didn't, I mean, you look back on it now, right? And if they didn't do that, if for some reason they didn't alienate as many as they did or anger as many as they did in whatever individual way for each one of those groups out there, then maybe this doesn't happen at all.
Possibly. And there's definitely a lot of contributing
where
factors.
would we be?
Like saying that it was any one thing.
Going on.
Yeah.
Well, there's a weird strain of tinfoil out there right now, and this is just tinfoil, that Mittani actually wanted this to happen so that he wouldn't have to dissolve the thing. He could actually get a more refined fighting group in one place.
You mean he's saying the exact same thing that AAA? Is this another thing we used to mock people for that now they're actually doing?
It just seems like
AAA used to say that. AAA came out twice, 2 separate times, and said we lost catch on purpose because we wanted to have the war to take it back.
Well, he's not saying this. To be clear, I've heard it somewhere. I don't know where.
It's all an elaborate ruse.
But it does seem like a lot of the stuff is the same patterns over and over again. Like, we have blobbing, we have bluing. That's what wins things. We have people saying we don't want that sov anyway.
Well, it's worth noting that regardless of whether or not you believe the amount of tinfoil it would take to believe that the Mittani orchestrated this whole thing from the beginning in order to somehow destroy his own coalition, I think that it is very true, especially if you believe any of the leaks that have come out, that the Mittani is in fact leveraging this war to attain perhaps objectives that he has had kicking around for a while.
I mean, yeah, they're definitely trying to make lemons out of lemonade right now, but they'd much rather rewind 5 months and take a different path. Like, let's not get that wrong.
I agree.
Like,
yeah, I don't think that there is some grand smoke-filled room there where okay.
This was definitely not the goal.
No, but this is a pattern that Mittani has. He goes in a direction, he's bold,
dude,
it breaks, and then
having people who are very close in your alliance flip on you and betray you, having corps leave, having a falling out with all these fucking corporations and people that used to run goons, that was never the plan.
I'm not saying it was a plan, but I'm saying, like, he goes in a direction in a strong way. It breaks. He says, oh, it broke. I'm going in a different direction. He makes corrections, unlike other people.
That's adaptation. That's not pre-planned thinking.
They're smart leaders. Yeah, this is why goons have been so good for so long. But, I mean, they did a royal fuck-up this time, and it's going to be a whole lot harder to make corrections.
Well, but it's also a new world.
As far as what people say, when they're getting beat or when they're winning or things like that, right? There is nothing anybody can say that hasn't already been said in some previous war or engagement or something out there. And even if you're the guy now saying it who used to criticize somebody else saying it, there's really nothing that the Mittani can say that.
There's always something they could have been a whole lot more honest. They could have I don't know. There's definitely other things they could have done.
Well, but who knows if what he had anyway wasn't sustainable. There was already people breaking off on his other side, Goon Swarm guys. There was an article in TMC just today. We'll talk about that later.
So they're definitely weaker in the past. And I got to say, that's the big third motivating factor, is that after all the betrayals of Indy... not betrayals, I'm sorry. I guess liberations of Indy and Blarth. And, Villy and all these people, like, a bunch of the usual players, all the big FCs from way back in the N3, NC days, or people that, from Black Legion that are now in the culture and all that. A lot of these big FCs talk all the time, even the Goon FCs back when we weren't fighting, talked all the time. But, we started having a private conversation like, God, Goons look weak. Do you think they're beatable now? And everyone started going like, I don't know, maybe, they could be. And then that was a big motivating factor as well. Everyone agreed that they were weaker and more beatable than in the past. Still not sure if we could do it, but we increased our odds significantly.
Well, then it is kind of like Rome, right? I mean, they grew to a huge extent. They started to decay around the edges, political infighting, and the barbarians climbed the walls. Sorry, not to call you barbarians.
It's actually interesting because I've been watching a lot of stuff about the fall of Rome in the last couple of weeks, and the parallels are just like, there's so many of them. You're right. I mean, what you're seeing now is actually really interesting because the final step will be if Karma Fleet recruits so much that the barbarians are now inside the gates, which is basically the final piece of the fall of Rome, was when the entirety of the Roman Guard had to expand, and so brought in the barbarians into the ranks. So we'll see.
That's an interesting analogy.
And now they're all Italians.
I mean, I don't understand why people always come up with ancient stuff. Like, am I like the only FC that didn't study Sun Tzu or whatever to like fight a war? Like,
No, that's
I don't understand. Like,
that's ridiculous. But
why do you even bring up February strategies or bullshit like this? Like, at the end of the day, what it is you see an enemy fleet, you form up for it, and you kill it. It's not like when we planned this campaign, we put up a map of all these Eve regions, and we were like drawing lines. This is the Roman Empire, and this is how we're gonna invade it. We're just looking at the way things go, and then we're reacting to them, right? Like,
oh, we have like
That's
paint
not a
pictures
narrative to get out there
with
and talk
fucking
about,
Dotland
though.
with arrows on it.
yeah, we're newspaper people. We like stories. But the other part of it is, like, history will repeat itself in different patterns, just like nature repeats itself. As far as what you need to do tactically, that's maybe totally different depending on the day.
People have sat and drawn up war plans. It was the Halloween War. I remember us getting sent Dotland pics where people literally did draw arrows saying these alliances are going to hit this system, these alliances are going to hit. So I mean, they
Which
have
side
done
were you on?
that. The CFC side.
Yeah, well, that's what everyone's making fun of you for, dude. Literally, like, I'm just making fun of you
I
for
know.
that.
I'm just saying. Like, you guys say no one. You say no one does this. I'm like, oh, they do.
Well, like, no one that doesn't get made fun of does that.
Oh, right.
That's what we're saying. Like, none of the cool kids do that.
The Imperium's like the D&D players in the basement
Well,
of war.
No, but look, there's always been that, whatever you want to call it, role-playing shtick involved. With the big, huge propaganda and comparing to something in history. It's just been part of the. It's been part of the narrative. I mean, Goons, the Imperium, the old CFC, whatever you want to refer to it as. There was always a story. It was built on It was just had a story background to it.
Well, now they don't control the narrative. The story is like, holy shit, look how terrible these people are. Except that those people are them.
That's the part that sucks, though, because that was the part that made the Imperium awesome, right? Like the content that came out of them. I remember, was it back in like 2013?
Saw it in their leaks. You saw it in their leaks when Tiber Rizzle said, we made a huge mistake thinking that we didn't need to, our Eve, like that we could just ignore our Eve. They even admit that.
Well, but they can't ignore it. They're kicked out of it.
Obviously, they don't say it now.
Well, they can't. They can do nothing about it. In fact,
it's too late. They fucked up. Like, that's the big fuck up they can't unfix. Is our Eve is forever lost to them.
Well,
and our Eve is the new Kugu, and Kugu used to be a big deal.
Yeah, exactly. But it's kind of a problem because when you can exclude a group like that, you make them have to form their own, narrative machine.
Reddit, no. We're not excluding Reddit. Reddit is not controlled by anybody.
No, Reddit excludes TMC.
The community is excluding, goons and everything goon related.
But the way the mechanics work.
Hold on.
Progod, the way the mechanics work. Hold on a second. The way the mechanics work, TMC can't be even put on there. So it's a mechanical thing.
You earned that status.
No. All right, TMC is a website. I'm saying they could post there. I mean, we're not putting our own rival news site.
They actually
I'm not saying
cannot.
TMC. I'm talking about the Imperium. They're members. This is the stuff they always used to do on Kugu. They just flooded the Kugu with like much better posting than our side, admittedly, and and fucking controlled the narrative. So now they're not doing that on purpose. They told their members to ignore our Eve, and they're suffering heavily for it. And it's too late. They can't reverse it.
Yeah, but what that causes is polarization, which I think is we're seeing in the meta. There's people who are really angry at each other because they're starting to have to go to their own source to get their own information, to hear their own good vibes. And that puts an incredible amount of pressure.
Kugu, all right, our Eve is a new Kugu, and Kugu is not some like unbiased, thing.
No, but you couldn't download either, though.
But you could print.
Slam people out of existence over there, and that I think is the difference, which is one of the reasons why I think you have a number of Imperium or Goons or whatever who don't go to Reddit.
Are we seriously going to sit here and talk about whether downvotes are unfair in the Eve meta?
No,
like, is that something we should get CCP to contact Reddit's headquarters?
No, but hey, CCP puts out dev blogs now, or at least communicates with players on one platform where a major portion of players are not allowed to really exist in.
hold on.
That's a
Let's
problem.
dispel a myth right now.
Not allowed
okay,
to
hold
really
on.
exist in. That's ridiculous. Of course they can. Make good posts. They'll get upvoted.
Yeah, I guess as individuals.
I got myself muted, I think, but I just unmuted myself. So let's dispel a bit of a myth, because the number 2 post right now is a Karma Fleet propaganda post. Okay, like there has been plenty of opportunities for Imperium members to post on Reddit. When I upvote or downvote, I don't pay it. Like maybe I'll check see their flare. I don't check their flare, but I'll see their flare. That doesn't cause me to change how I respond, but the flare is totally up to you. There are people in the MBC that choose to have Imperium flare just because they want to be jerks, and there's people with Imperium flare that choose to have Money Badger because they want to show it off. You can do whatever you want. That's the whole point of Reddit. Like, the idea that Reddit is something that can be controlled, or that Reddit is something that can be locked out of because of that, like, is actually a really bad way to engage with Reddit, and I think is one of the fundamental problems that he has had, is that he is trying to manipulate Reddit on his terms instead of on the terms in which Reddit is designed on, which is that if you post more interesting crap, it will go to the top.
All kinds of people vote Brigade. That's just the truth of it. You know, Tess does it, I'm sure. Don't they? Am I wrong?
Tess doesn't do it. They actually get really fucking pissed at you if you try to vote Brigade. I should know. I try to vote Brigade on post every single time.
So here's my problem with that accusation. There's only one entity in all of EVE history, as far as I have known, that has actually been accused, found guilty of, and punished for vote brigading, and that is TheMittanidotcom. My account is shadow banned because I was told to go vote. No, I know. I can tell the story.
No one professionally vote brigades Reddit. No one cares that hard.
I'm shadow banned too.
That's actually completely not true.
But we'll pick this topic up actually in the next section. I do want to go back to Progod and Killah Bee for one last section, and that is, what about this new model for warfare as far as how things get financed? Because it used to be like you put a place together, you take over territory, you make money off that territory, you build an army. And then it became like, oh, we just need the moons, we don't need the sovs, so we'll just have renters and we'll have moons. And now you just need the sponsorship of a powerful interest that has money.
Well, you always could get by with just the sponsorship of a powerful interest. I don't think that's ever changed.
So what's changed? Have they just now kind of like the mafia, one of them says, I think I want to be famous?
I think someone with a ton of money finally stepped up. I mean, it's happened before, way back in the day, when that Russian dude funded Red Overlord and gave them like $20,000 worth of Plex to buy a supercap fleet. Like, this is the first time it's happened. It's just extremely rare. No, I'm not joking. Like, some
it's amazing.
Oil tycoon spent all of his money on Plex or game time codes at the time to buy a shit ton of supercaps for his alliance, and they wrecked everybody.
It was effective?
Yeah, it actually worked. I think I'm remembering that story right. But I mean, yeah, it's definitely been done before. It's just really rare. Because
banks can't really be attacked. So how do you fight back?
Well, I don't think everyone. I think everyone. I mean, there's always been a couple trillionaires. I don't think everyone's had as much ISK as Somber ISK or now I1ISK did. I don't think these kind of financiers were possible till the popularity of these gambling sites. Which, by the way, are you guys gonna add poker? Like actually sit down live ring poker?
Yeah, eventually on 2.0, and it's gonna be cool as fuck. It's gonna be small. It's not gonna be like huge cards.
By the way, Manifest says $200,000. I think he might be exaggerating. I'm not sure.
Manifest clarified on the Red Overlord thing.
Yeah, in chat here.
Yeah, that's right. No, so yeah, I remember it being a huge number. $200,000 is what it is. He's played longer than I have.
Yeah. What do you mean he plays?
Yeah,
is he in your alliance?
No, Manifest is a former Thief player.
I know, I'm just kidding. All right, so you think there's nothing wrong with the sponsorship of war, so to speak?
I mean, you're never going to be able to, mechanic that stuff out. Like that's
you're gonna have to keep in mind that if I1ISK would approach PL and be like, yo, I'm giving you a trillion ISK, go attack NC dot, we still wouldn't do it. There still needs it is a matter of.
That is very true. That is.
There's a reason why we took them, because we felt CFC is a good idea. You can't just randomly throw money around and make everybody do what you like doing. because there's still, there's still friendship or like relationship or whatever in Eve.
So
So it just fitted. Everything fitted, right? We had the money that was a really good catalyst for some groups. We had the enemy that everybody wanted to fight for a long time, but never really got their ass up because for whatever reason. So now we got all this together and just played out just fine.
So diplomacy is important again.
Fucking diplomacy, man. Like rise of the paper pushers, man. But I don't want to go into that.
Well, what about 20 trillion?
Wait, go into it, Killah Bee. I want to know what you know about paper pushers.
Like I personally think that, and like I know I'm gonna like make some people really like I'm gonna offend some people here, but I think every successful EVE alliance is run by FCs and not run by any that's what we call paper pushers, is people that don't actually do anything but talk. I think like every alliance that has been run by a person that then goes to an FC and say,
Well,
"This is what
Killah,
I
you
want
know
to
how
do."
I feel about that one.
Yeah, I know.
Let us
But
know
I'm
how you
saying,
feel.
I personally think that nobody can. This is the thing, right? This is the thing. How this, like, I can give a little bit of background on that. So, Lenny came to me and was like, "Yo, so this is the idea I have. This is what I want you to do, or this is what I kind of want to have, right?" And he had a lot of plans, and some of those plans were just completely crazy, right? Like some of those plans, I was like, "All right, well, that sounds kind of weird." So what Lenny what we ended up doing, or what we end up doing right now, is Lenny comes to me and some other people within the coalition. He's not just only talking to me; he's talking to a lot of people. But he comes to us and he tells us his idea of what he wants to happen. And then what we do is we translate his ideas of the what he likes to see into something that's actually playable.
Yeah, that actually is workable for everyone.
That is workable, right?
Yeah,
And
there's a
that's
lot of really good FCs advising on this.
Yeah, exactly. So this is the thing. Like we have this huge group of very competent people that have been playing the game. Most of them have been playing the game longer than I do. And that we all take Lenny's ideas and Lenny's wishes or whatever, and we put them into we translate them into an actual war, I guess. And that's the thing. Like I don't know, man. I personally have no very high, I don't have a high opinion of diplomats, obviously, because I think all they do is talk. I don't actually think they accomplish anything, in my opinion. But I know there's a lot of people that think very differently about it, so that's why I said I don't want to go into it too much.
Well, that is what diplomats do, though, right?
Yeah. I mean,
they talk.
It's 100% subjective as well. There's alliances that are completely run by diplos and all that stuff, right? And like the different tiers and all that stuff. But I just I don't know. I don't feel like it's the right approach.
You're saying
the thing is, the alliance. There are some alliances that realize you can't actually do anything if you don't have active FCs. So you better do things that your FCs want to do. And there are some alliances that don't realize that. And those are alliances with diplos that realize that you have to have content creators if you want to do anything. They work well. And there are some alliances that are run by diplos who understand that and will only do something if their FCs want to do it. And then there are some alliances that don't. And you always see them. Those are usually even C tier or less.
Last question is, what's the relationship between paper pushers or CEOs and diplomats, logistics people, and FCs? Because they get you everything you need, right? They get your people stuff.
Yeah, so I think Killah Bee is underestimating some of these people. But
I mean, we have no paper pushers in PL almost, so that's great.
Oh, I don't know about that. Well,
but
they're definitely not all FCs. So.
Yeah. At least I don't have to deal with them, which is why I feel like there's not a lot. But
no.
you don't that's why I said I'm gonna upset a lot of people, because you can't forget these guys. You can't forget the logistics guys that actually get all the doctrine ships into your staging systems. You can't forget the people that run all the staging towers for you. You can't forget these people. I'm just saying. I don't think these people should be in charge of the alliance, is what I'm trying to say.
Somebody once...
They are important and they are needed, but they shouldn't be running the alliance.
Somebody once said, look, PL is mostly FCs and people who have some FC experience. Am I wrong about that?
There's a lot of them, yeah, but there's
there's definitely a lot of retired FCs, some by choice of their own even.
But
yeah, somebody asked the question: Did the FCs run the PL Tech and Renter empire?
Tech and yeah, I mean, I wasn't around for that, so I know who I actually know who ran bot for the most part for PL, and he's an FC. But obviously, running something like bot and the tech empire involves like way more people than just one person. Like I said, I don't want to play down what they do. I don't want to play down how big their part is at being part of an alliance. Like I said, I'm just saying I don't think they should run it.
All right. Hey, I want to thank you guys. We're going to have an intermission. Progod and Killah, you are welcome to stick around for the next segment. We're going to have a quick intermission. We'll be back in about 4 minutes. You guys can have a bio, whatever. And next, we're going to talk about the media, and probably specifically TMC and IWANTISK and the articles that came out, the back and forth. We'll be right back.
Can we talk, or?
1 second. All right, now you can talk. I can't hear you, but you guys can talk. Sorry, I'm not sure when this thing ends, so I will be abruptly coming in, so okay, we're coming back. All right, we're back. Thanks for sticking around for the second part of the show. So in this next segment, I want to introduce 4 new people. First, Eep was introduced earlier. He is the owner of IWANTISK. Can you say hello, Eep? My mistake. Can you say hello again, Eep?
Hello, hello.
Okay, thanks. I had the volume down. I would also like to invite someone I'm a fan of. They have a blog called NoizyGamer, and it is NoizyGamer.
Hello, everybody.
From TMC, we have the writer of the IWANTISK Made Me a Criminal article, and his name is Baculus.
How's it going?
And with him today is an editor from TMC, and we call him Editor Rayn.
Hi, Matterall. I gotta admit, when you said someone I'm a fan of, I was hoping you're talking about me. Hi, everybody.
I'm definitely a fan of yours. You're the one.
Apparently that was not you.
He does
Do I know you?
a ton of work. All right, so I've opened up TMC here, and we're going to look at some of the... I like the optics. A lot of these stories are actually really big stories, but I want to point out this one here. How IWANTISK made criminals of me, CCP, and me. And Baculus, do you want to tell us about this story, like what inspired you to write it and stuff?
Yeah, I'm strongly interested in hearing the inspiration.
You know what? I don't think anyone will ever believe me. Because the first draft of this story, there's been a lot of inference about, did Mittani tell him to write it? I think someone actually sent me an email accusing me of being Mittani alt. Because I guess Mittens used to be a lawyer.
Yeah, why don't you tell us why you wrote it?
So, when I wrote the first draft, I was actually in Wingspan. One night, just drunk, watching the TMC stream. I think it was Goblin Locks said, TMC is looking for writers. And I was like, I could do that. And I had actually just gone to IWANTISK, which, no shit, I actually like your site, Eep.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
So I'd gone to IWANTISK. I had played at the raffles. I'd lost a shitload of ISK, which I was totally okay with. But I was like, oh man, maybe you could do a blackjack system, because on your raffles, every once in a while it gives double prizes or triple prizes, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
so
I want to actually introduce that card game as well, actually, so it will be coming.
See, if you did the card games, no lie, totally legal.
Wait.
Okay.
So, I don't understand how this is related. Why did you choose to literally post an article that IWANTISK website is, gonna get everyone indicted or whatever? I can't remember exactly what it said. Or that it's illegal.
Well,
why did you do that?
Let's first admit that that's a catchy title to little clickbaitish to bring you into the story. And so, go ahead and finish.
I was totally going to sensationalize it because not a writer, first article, and I totally wanted to get a bunch of attention, which I think I did. Mission accomplished.
Yeah, you're right. Hold on a second. Progod, hold on a second. I just wanted to say that the probably what caused a lot of the problems as far as the criticism, because it was a huge firestorm of criticism, was that it was more of an accusation rather than, say, a cautionary tale. It made, it said this is a problem instead of saying this might be a problem, kind of thing. Do you think, because you were a writer, because you wanted to get attention for your story, which is what a writer wants to do, did that kind of cloud your judgment, or was it this kind of, would you do it again this way?
Oh, no, not at all. Let me first of all, I guess I should just apologize, especially to Eep. Not intending to, obviously I wanted to get a little attention. But see, going back to my thought process in the story, so I was going to write a stupid card counting article or something, and I started looking into IWANTISK, and because I'm obsessive compulsive and I happen to work in law in Florida, I found out, hey, this company is based here. Time to poke around into it. And a friend of mine who's actually an ADA made a comment to me, because he used to play Eve, I was telling him about it, that, hey, that might be one of these sites that we're actually prosecuting right now. And as it turns out, there is a massive legal gray area, and in Florida, it's starting to not be a gray area. It's starting to be a black and white area.
Now, it should...
I don't know.
Hold on a second, ProGod. We'll get a chance to open it up in a second, but it should be said that I am the TMC news editor, and everything that is EVE-related comes through me. And so, ultimately, it was my responsibility to assure the quality of the read. And so, actually, I brought Ryan in here to kind of help me tell you a little bit more of, like, how the editorial process works. And so, Ryan?
Well, I gotta ask though. So the author of the article, the guy who spawned the idea, has just now apologized for the way the article was written and just in general accusing them of that. Now that the author has apologized, would you, like, as the head of the EVE department, retract the article or say we don't stand by that article anymore?
No, I'll retract the author's apology.
Oh wow! So you're gonna sit here and stand by it?
No, I'm not.
Article and what it
I'm
said?
not going to double down on it, but I am going to say some things about it in just a second. But I want to introduce Ryan to kind of talk about what the process is when we consider material, because this is a submission, wasn't actually a staff writer, and that's treated a little bit differently. You want to tell them how it's treated?
Right, so what happens is whenever people submit an article that they've written, either because we've talked to them outside of TMC, they've read one of our posts asking for more submissions or more staff, or otherwise they just want to make their voices heard, they send an article to submissions@TheMittanidotcom. What we do then is we read through them. We then do a check to see if this is any good. If this is something that we feel fits the site and the kind of tone or topics that we want to go for. And as it so happens, this one passed the couple of tests that we had internally. We got back in touch with Baculus pretty quickly to say, yes, we are interested in this, and would you like to do more, which is how we get a lot of our staff. And ultimately, we then brought him on board and we published the article.
But
So
there
you
was a little
published-
more to this
so
one.
hold on.
There was a little more to
So
this
you-
article because there were discussions before it was launched. So it
Wait,
didn't
so
just go out.
One sec, yeah. So you had discussions. You saw the submission. You thought this might fit our tone, which you're right. At the time, it definitely did fit your tone, which is the problem. Did you guys not realize, like, what was all going on around the RMT accusations and all this stuff, and that the CFC was putting out as a narrative, and go like, hey, maybe right now is not the best time to post this article because we're going to get a shit ton of backlash? Or did that just never cross at all?
Well, there was a lot of things going on at the time. There
Because
always
the
is.
problem is, if you're
Yeah, it was a
sitting there and you're
timing.
like, oh no, we never considered that.
No, of course we
didn't
did.
think it would be a problem. It doesn't. It's hard to believe that CFC leadership, the people who run TMC, weren't involved in getting that article posted. Like, I hear the story, I really do. It sounds legitimate, and I believe pretty much all of it. But then sit here and say that you didn't consider that
Nobody's
this would be
saying-
the accusation,
nobody-
the backlash that came from it.
The fact is that CFC leadership is not involved in this at all. The Mittani is the CEO of the site and the company, this is true, and Sion Kumitomo is ultimately our director of content. But in terms of CFC leadership, Imperium leadership figures, editorial at TheMittanidotcom is largely an independent entity.
Well, it runs independent, and the editorial part of getting stuff out is really a small group of people, Ryan being one of them. I'm being another one as well, and so all the stuff that comes through there has to come through us, and we're the ultimate gatekeepers. The reason I retracted the author's apology is because it's not his fault. He wrote a piece that was strong. It was up to me to look at it and say, it was actually very lawyerly, so I didn't quite understand what I was reading, but I did know, like, this is going to ruffle some feathers. Now,
In my understanding, the apology wasn't for the article being written, but the effect that it made.
I'm sorry, then that's of course appropriate.
So,
Yeah.
okay,
To be
so
perfect-
Hold on,
one sec.
ProGod, hold on a second. I know you have ideas
My
about
bad,
this.
my bad.
No, you're fine. I know that FCs talk and don't stop when they're, because they have to, right? That's what they do. I want to bring in NoizyGamer though. Noisy, you write a blog, and one of the things that you cover a lot is RMT, but you also cover a lot of different things. I don't want to say you're just into RMT, but you also know a lot about casinos and stuff like that. You wrote a counter argument against the article, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. Part of the problem is that back when IWANTISK was banned from the in-game browser, back in, I think it was April or May of 2015. I did a little bit of research into IWANTISK just to see what they were about. I saw a company. It's like, is this like one of those, shady companies or whatever? I saw, okay, the company's inactive. The guy doesn't live in Florida. It's like, okay, so I knew the guy moved out of the state. He didn't have a company. He wasn't doing business in Florida. And Dirk can back me up on this because I told him way back then, when they were still on Eve Radio, him and BC. And so I just let it go. I was like, oh, this isn't very important. Then I saw the article and I go, first off, you have to actually be in Florida and operate in Florida in order to violate Florida laws. And I may be a space lawyer. I may be an internet spaceship pixel lawyer, but I'm not a real lawyer. So I couldn't address the legal points except for the fact that you got to be in Florida in the jurisdiction in order to violate the laws. And so that's the way that I approach the subject.
And so your blog basically said, well, the guy's not in Florida, so why does the law apply to him in Florida?
See,
yeah,
the thing
basically.
So, if I recall correctly, what we had was one of our writers contacted a public legal official in Florida for comment, and while he did not identify himself as a journalist before doing this, and so could not comment on the record about it, which we had to talk about later on, the comment that we did receive from this official did indicate that there might have been something to this article.
The other issue is, if I can...
Yeah, go ahead.
The other issue is, like, basically, I mean, I live on Biz, so yeah, I saw that the company was inactive, but it doesn't matter. The company that signed my paycheck, the law firm that signed my paycheck last week, is inactive, administratively dissolved. It happens all the time. Sometimes, usually, it's just a slip up in paperwork, and there really aren't any consequences for it. But the company that the website was registered to is a Florida company, which means that that Florida company is operating that website, and they are absolutely governed by Florida law. Whether or not they're based in Florida, they're registered to do business there.
I actually don't want to get into the legal aspects of it. This is more about a judgment. Like, what's the judgment that put this article out? What effects did it have? What was the counters to it and stuff like that? So we won't actually debate the article here. It stands on its own.
I almost don't think it matters what the reason was why he wrote the article, right? And the moral outrage that is out there related to this article. Number one, guess what, people? There have been other articles written that are attacking various individuals at various times, throughout the history of Eve across. I would say probably all of the media sites that are out there at one time or another. This is not the first, and it sure as hell won't be the last. Why he wrote it, it's almost who really cares. The bigger question that I had, and what I brought up with Scion the next morning, is why would TMC put this out there? Now, I'm a little bit more cognizant about what the backlash of things like that is going to be. I don't necessarily know why, as a business, they would try and drum up that backlash if that's what they knew was going to be coming. To me, it didn't make sense from a business point of view to put that out there, given that it was so targeted at an individual, so targeted at a certain circumstance, amid the context of this war that is going on, where IWANTISK is, the primary funder, of that war. So, I mean, I think it was bad optics all the way around. I think it was a bad decision to have put it up there then. Not to say that the underlying idea behind it isn't.
Well, go ahead, yeah.
Isn't a discussion worthy of happening, right? I mean, the whole idea of casinos and maybe the legalities. I mean, space lawyering is one thing, real lawyering is another. But maybe the topic needed to happen in a much more generalized setting.
Well, it's not just the optics thing, like, oh, this may be a bad time to release it. It's the judgment of putting the article out in the first place. And Matterall, I've said you're an excellent writer and editor, and you're one of my favorite Eve news writers from all places. But I gotta, if you're saying that none of this came from up top and it was your decision and the editor's decision and it was no Mittani or something involvement whatsoever, which I'm still doubtful of, you still have a lot of CFC and TMC people who've been there around a while. And remember when TMC and the CFC itself tried to start their own EVE gambling website.
Yeah.
The Evening Game Club. They're well aware of CCP's IP. Goons have had deals with CCP's IP before. They just got done with a Kickstarter where they were trying to put a book out with CCP's IP, and they worked out all that deal. They acutely understand why a gambling website is legal. Everyone there knows it.
Well, that's the thing. I don't think they do, and especially in Florida. This was an examination and an exploration that really nobody else could put out because everybody else is sponsored by gambling sites.
Well,
all the other news outlets are.
Here's my two concerns. Okay, you have it's first of all there's the timing, and of course there's always going to be timing issues. But this is on Monday. This comes out Monday, which means it's basically the first article that people see after a fireside chat with the Mittani, because those happen on Sunday. So that's kind of relevant. But what I think is really important is that when the leader of your organization, whose flag is flown on the website, regardless of whether or not they're personally involved in every single thing, when the leader of your organization says things like, "We're not going to fight fair," and has openly in the past used out-of-game mechanisms in order to strike at and cause people to back down within game, like, even if that isn't the motivations behind the piece, you have to realize that that is the only conclusion that people are going to come up with.
It's so hard for me not to tell you the conversation that happened while we were looking at it, because it's very illuminating of the process and the decision making and the weighing of consequences and the ethics. Frankly, we had a long conversation about what is this thing? Is it doxing? Is it not doxing?
So I guess that's my problem. You had all of that. You had that conversation. It was really tense, and you know that everything is kind of up to 9 right now, and yet you still came to the conclusion that it would be okay. I think that's
just it. Well, do outside influences determine when you put something out, or do you do it based on your values?
I think we've delved into it as much as we can.
Well, actually, there's a. Go ahead.
There's more? You think there's more? There's other stuff.
I've got a question I'd like to ask.
Sure, Nosy.
If Eep were not pointing his finger of doom and trillions and trillions of ISK at Goonswarm and at SMA and everybody, if instead he were pointing his finger of doom at Test Alliance, please ignore, would we have the same level of outrage? Oh. And I would say no, because Reddit would be, instead of bashing on this article, they would be praising it to the hilt. This would be maybe even upvoted more than HVAC repairman's tweet. It would be great. And you would not be hearing this, and then you would be hearing people say that they need to shut down the gambling in EVE, they need to shut down EVE, and that EVE
that
is a horrible
ridiculous.
Person. And I'm
no one ever said that about EVE Games Club. The fact that if this were flipped, everyone would be all over bringing the CFC down. That is the most victim card bullshit I've ever heard.
Actually, if you look back at the history of attacks on various gaming sites, going back to Summer Blink, it has kind of a long history. Things have changed a little bit here recently, where we have more of a defense of some of these groups out there.
You're roboting a little bit.
Oh, sorry, I'll stop talking.
Yeah, I would argue that historically we have been, as a community, or EVE Online players as a group, have been very anti-RMT. So it is a hot button issue, and historically in the past has resulted in some of the most aggressive responses by the player base imaginable, including Summer Blink, whose response was compared to Monocle Gate and other of the biggest outrages we've ever seen. So I think that seems a bit disingenuous. The problem that is actually the fact that much rage that we've seen in previous accusations, and RMT being such a serious issue within our game, and us taking RMT so seriously, makes it even more of a question of whether or not such accusations, if they could be seen as unfounded, or if they could be seen as being done for the wrong reasons or whatever, you have to know. You have to know that this was going to happen.
I'm just gonna point out something else, and that is that I am hearing arguments I'm reading arguments on Reddit that when I was making them 2 years ago about the validation of the EULA, I was told the EULA doesn't even, is not a legal document. We can just ignore the EULA. Why are you doing this? And now everybody's quoting the EULA. I mean, I'm seeing the little arguments going through there. I've been trying to be consistent throughout the years about the EULA, being the space lawyer and everything. But I'm going to tell you something. I'm watching Reddit flip, and I think it's just because this article came from TMC, number one, and number two, it was aimed at somebody that they like.
So once again, your prepositions are correct.
People, you're next, Deep. Go ahead.
Quick directing at the other side, because there were plenty of people, myself included. Okay, I'm in the Imperium. I do a couple of shows on TheMittanidotcom. I thought that it was out of line. I thought that it was way too targeted and way too wrapped in with the entire relationship between the Imperium, TheMittanidotcom, the current war. There were plenty of others out there.
Yeah, actually, there was a lot of outrage from the people who are most loyal to, say, TMC, most loyal readers and stuff like that. Even Dreydan, who's like Bambi, was really mad in the comment section. Weren't you, Dreydan?
I did post a comment that, I guess I would fall under that specification of the moral outrage that Dirk was talking about. It was just because to me it did feel like it was definitely a targeted kind of attempt to possibly put charges on, like real life charges on someone to give your group a leg up in a war that you're playing in game. Seemed a little ridiculous to me. Because I mean that's.
No,
you put a felony on someone's head, that's lifelong impactful.
Yeah, is that Eep that wants to talk there?
No, that wasn't me.
Oh, who was it?
Me.
Go ahead, Baculus.
Can I just say, there were parts of, for instance, that statute that you could really easily manipulate, read the wording, find a shitty lawyer, and harass. You could, abuse it. You could use it to harass the fuck out of Eep. You could use it to harass CCP, and I purposefully omitted that shit. And I made sure when I was talking to TMC editors through emails back and forth, hey, I did leave some of this stuff out, and I want it left out. I didn't even want to include a link to Eep's business registry. That was done, I think, by one of the editors or someone. And back to what Noisy was saying, a lot of the reactions, you just have to look at what happened when r/Eve went to legal advice, and the people there who are actually trying to help people wind up getting shit canned and downvoted because what they say isn't to Test's liking or whoever's liking.
Okay, so Eep, do you have anything to say on the actual article? Because you did a response to it that was also published on TMC right away.
Yeah, I think the response had the gist of it, really. I'm pretty confident in what I know already. I myself was a paralegal for 3 years in Florida on corporate law, so
you felt you were fine?
Yeah.
I don't know if I'd trust Spradlin with that, though.
Well, that's.
Man, I know the guy. He is.
That's neither here nor there. What happened was that you put out a response. The response was an angry response, and it's very cool and collected. But your response was war on Goonswarm.
Well, yeah, because in my opinion, anything that gets posted on TMC has to in some way be approved, especially something so sensitive, by some higher up. I mean, I'm sure you had to pass it by some higher up because that's pretty sensitive stuff.
Yeah, well, I will just say for the record, Mittani was never involved. There was no direction.
But there's other Goon leadership people above you in TMC.
Well, that's true.
You saying Scion was never involved?
I'm not trying to cover for Imperium. I'm just saying that there was no direct involvement from Mittani.
Well, here's the thing.
There are senior Imperium leadership members involved. in the site's operation, but editorial is largely self-contained, and yeah, we just largely work on our own initiatives
So
without
they
any.
never saw it though, and they never got a chance to read it. It was all just. When I'm all right, so here's what I'm asking. Was it just the people who are on this stream right now who are responsible for posting it? Because honestly, Matterall, I know you're not really tied into this stuff, so I can see how. And I think even you admit it was a mistake to post it now. I can see how that's an honest mistake, though. But what I can't see is that if someone who's involved in Goon leadership, who understands the meta and all the other stuff involved, got a chance to look at that and went like, okay, yeah, that's good, go ahead and post that, then that's gross negligence, and it really is. On their part. And possibly malicious.
Maybe, if you think that that's what their motivations are, but I think on some level the motivation is to put stuff out that's kind of brave and accusatory at times. If you read my IWANTISK article, it wasn't real soft. It had a real strong point of view about the facts and where they got chased to. This also had a lot of facts. They were very lawyerly. I didn't understand them, but it also chased a story down to where, it could be. So this is not new, and
yeah, so
that's that's good
right,
reading.
In like real journalism in real life is like supposed to challenge stuff, yeah, and be accusatory and all that stuff because it's real society. But this is a video game. I mean, even if that were the case, that it was illegal to do that, or that he could get his site taken down by Florida law. What you were basically doing is snitching on him for. I mean, we all play the same damn game. It wasn't illegal, but even if it was, you're using what you know to get someone's site taken down, not because you're a Florida resident and it's taking money from you, slide out of your state taxes, but because it's a video game that you both play.
Yeah.
So, it's an honest mistake, but it's a legit mistake.
It was clearly a mistake in that it pissed a lot of people off.
So what I can see is if it was just you and Baculus, and that is an honest mistake, and that's honestly, we'll get past that. I'm totally okay with that. But if it wasn't just you and it was people above you who know better, that was some of the out of game, taking this stuff too seriously, getting RL involved stuff that we're talking about.
Well, I'll tell you.
If it had nothing to do with the meta, then that's one thing.
I'll tell you
if it did, then that's an issue.
Okay, it didn't have anything to do with the meta, and I am as certain of it as I can be that all the stuff that we do since then as well is based on delivering stuff that's very readable. We're kind of on a roll right now, and I want to get past this article to the EAP article that came out, and this is kind of ironic and funny.
Well, can I say something to kind of bridge the two?
Okay.
So I just want to say, I've written for the Mittani and I write for the Crossing Zebras, so I've kind of existed in this whole world with the bullpen and all that stuff. First of all, I want to say that if Matterall says that the upper echelons didn't look at it, that's probably true. They have a war to fight. They have very competent people to manage their stuff. The chances that they individually looked at it and signed off on it is very, very low. The other thing I want to say is that, it goes back to what is it? Jon Stewart used to say, right, about Fox News. They're either evil or stupid. Now, it sounds to me like Matterall's saying that it was a dumb mistake, which is fine. And to his credit, he went back and posted the opposite side afterwards, which is, to be honest, exactly what we would expect. So, although it is a mistake, well, I feel much better about the fact that they did follow up with it.
You did what you needed to do to correct the mistake.
No, the mistake was no.
Go ahead.
You're probably right, Progod, but let me clear that up as well. The decision to have a counter was made even before that was originally printed. We didn't know how big the story was going to be, but the fact that it was going out needed a counter. I actually wanted the counter before that story went out, so I would have preferred to approach EAP with that story first and say, what's wrong with this? Just like I did with the SMA story that they wanted to put out. I went to EAP and I said, tell me your side of the story before I publish anything this way.
Wait, so if you said that you wanted to and you're the head dude, why didn't you?
I made the decision that we needed to get it out the door and we would give him a chance to respond afterwards. And that was a different experience.
I can believe that. And Matterall, what I've said is I honestly believe, you when you say what you that it was an honest mistake. And I can see in the way you handled it in the last 3 or 4 days after it came out that you know what you're doing. and in my opinion, you already did more than enough to correct it. So if you're saying there was no leadership involvement, then and it was an honest mistake, then that's okay, and that's forgivable. I think we can move on with it.
Right. So let's move on. And I wanted to also say with the response, when I approached Eep, he was already, well, actually, you were going to put it on, I don't know if I can say this, but what were you going to do with your response?
My response? Oh, I wasn't gonna put it on Reddit, but I was shadow banned. I guess people downloaded whatever I posted. Yeah.
So
instead I gave it to you.
Yeah, actually, you said you were going to put it on Reddit, and I asked you if you could put it on our site as well because I wanted that response to be part of the record for TMC.
Oh yes, correct.
Yeah, so we agreed to put it on both, and then you figured out you couldn't post on Reddit because Reddit had voted you down so much.
Somebody did, yeah. Oh, I do. I made some good comments, but bias.
So, it's just, it's funny how Reddit can pick a hero. They can hit CO2 with a ton of criticism for blowing up their own ships, and then the next day, they're heroes for breaking away. And that goes for everybody. You break away from Mittani, you're a villain before, you're a hero afterwards. So it's really not a reliable place, only because the mechanics will push you down and not let you have your turn. That's just the way it's geared.
I have been a significant defender of Reddit in all of these conversations, and I will 100% agree with that statement.
Okay, thanks a lot. So let's move on. There's a couple other things I want to hit. There was also an article that just went out today by International Business News. Anybody read that? Is that what it's called, International Business News?
Yeah, I read it.
God, yeah. I didn't know.
International Business Times or
Times, yeah.
Is it an actual big thing?
Yeah, they're the ones that bought Newsweek, so pretty legitimate.
I read the headline and then I stopped reading.
They bought Newsweek. Wow, really?
Yeah.
That article is by far my favorite piece of writing to come out of this war.
Really? Why?
It's pretty amazing.
Because if you know all of the levels of it, it's great because there's the leaks about it beforehand, like it was foreshadowed with Mittani bragging about it, and then in the article, like it talks about the Mittani, but then it starts to kind of almost dismiss what he says, and then it even references the leaks that were made about how much he can control that very news site. Like, I have never seen the meta come full circle on such a grand stage before.
Not even just full circle, but the fact that he does reference that in a way that would then lead you to believe that perhaps the rest of the article, like he might try and keep from doing that. It seemed like he actually just did it.
It was amazing.
Well, to be clear, I was actually quoted in the article a couple times, and it was just a 20-minute conversation with the journalist over Skype. I gave him some background on the war, gave him some background on the game, and then talked about certain figures. But he told me that he had actually played the game a while back, about 2 years ago, and was it just wasn't for him, so he only played for about a few weeks, and then he took off. So he'd already had experience with the game. He'd actually gone to FanFest and also experienced it there. So he kind of knew what EVE was. And if you look at the article, it really was, you could tell he was kind of mad at Mittani because he put that stuff in there to embarrass Mittani because he's not going to be controlled that way as a journalist. And then all the points that he hit were kind of all the high points of things that have happened that were kind of bad for the game. So it was a little bit like, here are all the controversial things, even though he said this is something bad that happened in the game, but here's how it kind of corrected itself. And a lot of the things that he did was just kind of equate things in kind of a negative way. So a lot of people are calling it a hatchet job on EVE, and it's too bad because here we are celebrating a huge amount of activity and a lot of exposure. We get this article out there, and it kind of doesn't deliver.
I thought it was an honest piece.
Remember that.
I thought it was an honest piece.
I actually thought it was okay too.
Yeah.
I mean, you also have to remember that we EVE players are. That article was not for us. That article is for people who probably don't know about it. So in their eyes, they probably think it's a damn good article. And you know what? It's good advertising for the game for those people who don't know anything about it.
But I mean, you're calling it the most boring.
Hypercritical about
yeah, but the headline is the most boring game. Like that's not good.
That was pretty messed up.
But when you read the article, it doesn't sound. It sounds like there's a lot of freaking intrigue and shit going on in this game, and it's almost like the headline doesn't quite match up with the rest of the article.
I think that's the headline is that way because that's the reputation that Eve has earned over 10 years, right? So anybody who's reading that article who isn't playing Eve now will probably have that, who knows about Eve will have had idea kicking around, either spreadsheets in space or that is really boring and it's a bunch of nerds fight, whatever. That's not a new declaration about Eve. Although I will say that, you are correct. If it is in fact that the meta war did in fact kind of damage the overall opinion, if this guy came in, saw everything and was just like, these dudes are freaking crazy, and like posted this more negative view than he would have without it, then yeah, I mean, it's a good example of our meta war spilling over and actually damaging our game as a whole, which we've actually seen quite a bit since starting with and including the Kickstarter. But I honestly think that it was less that, and I think it was more to do with the fact that that's kind of what the International Business Times would say about Eve.
Well, that's a good point, right? Considering the source, I guess, because their audience is probably different than gamers, maybe. He's a technology writer. He's not necessarily a video game writer.
Right. So anytime they're going to talk about us, they're going to be a little bit tongue-in-cheek because, they're above us.
I briefly went through International Business Times tech session. It's a whole lot of gaming.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, so to clear it up, that's what I wanted you guys to know about the experience. I think there was some buzz out there because there's definitely a fever for blaming everything on Mittani, that he had controlled the author actually to say that the game sucked because he was starting to lose the game. And that's just not the case. All right, so there's one last article I want to talk about, and that is a really well-written article on Crossing Zebras from somebody that worked for Crossing Zebras as an editor, but also worked for TMC as an editor before, and later on as a proofreader. And that is Denikov wrote, I forget the title, but it was something like The Fall of an Emperor. Let's have a look.
Tyrant.
Fall of a Tyrant.
Tyrant, okay.
Let's at least get the active word there.
Yeah, The Fall of a Tyrant.
I'll start off. I think it was a very well-written article. There were some things that, you could probably find some people who will disagree with. Certainly, there was disagreement over the raising of the issue with Vile Rat. That looked like it got some heat, especially from Darius Johnson, and I'm sure some other quarters. Denikov was a goon. I think he still is, right?
Yeah, I think so.
I mean, he was giving an opinion piece that was quite brutal in a lot of ways. And I think that he did. Well, number one, he's a good writer. Okay, so he's able to put that out there in such a way. Certainly within the current meta of what's going on out there, it got a lot of views. A lot of people liked it. I would be interested to see a rebuttal piece to it.
I think DJ already did the rebuttal in the comment section with Danica. They had a huge fucking back and forth with it.
Mainly over the Vile Rat piece, though, right?
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I think DJ was right. I think he had an excellent paper right up until he tried to swing at the Vile Rat. And honestly, if you want to disparage Mittani's character, there's so many other ways you can do it, and in a legitimate way. He just chose that one, and DJ's right. Who is he to say anything about that? I don't think out of all the things that they're getting shit over, that's one they should get shit over.
Yeah, there is a rebuttal piece being put together, if I'm not mistaken. Ryan, is it being put together by Arendis?
Arendis has been writing a rebuttal to the Business Times piece on the most boring game.
That's how in control I am. Yeah, we're not going to rebut the Fall of Tyrant, or at least I don't see anything of that being submitted or anything like that.
Well, I wouldn't think that you would. I wouldn't think that TheMittanidotcom would. But I would.
There's a lot of stuff that was aimed at.
There's some writer out there somewhere who has a different opinion.
There's a lot of stuff in.
Well, that's honestly, that's for Mittani to rebut internally. That's
no, because there was a lot of stuff that was aimed directly at TMC. He's talking about the NDA and how, because he went and did an AMA, which is an Ask Me Anything on Reddit that he, then had to sign this NDA, and he's like, yeah, I'm not doing that. And that's not my experience with the truth. I was there when that happened, and that's just not the way it went down. But and I've said that in some comments, I think, actually on my article, that those things were not related. They're kind of put together, and there's kind of a lot of that. But there was stuff at TMC, and TMC could say, hey, that's a lot of that stuff's not true, but we're choosing not to, I suppose. Okay, I want to point out, you guys see the roulette, the slots.
Yeah.
So there's definitely a gambling sponsorship for this website.
Oh yeah, Crossing Zebras has absolutely never been quiet about the fact that they're sponsored by EveBet.
There's nobody's saying it's out in front. Everybody knows that. But look at that, EveBet, IWANTISK, and Eve Hold'em. So these gambling sites are sponsoring the two media sites that kind of report on news, except TMC.
I'm actually not on there.
So, I mean, what is it? Does TMC not ask for sponsorship, or?
I think you're on there right there.
Probably because, CFC fucking Alliance Wallet sponsors TMC.
Yeah, well.
They don't need the ISK from sponsors.
Media, the multi-million media empire of the Mittani's got it.
Well, it's like what Gevlon said, right? It's the multi-thousand.
Isn't that what, half the CFC people who left got pissed about, or Indy and all them, that, the Alliance Wallet was being used to pay TMC shit?
Yeah, I'm not sure of the accuracy of that either, actually, but it is now. It wasn't at the time. Well, I can't even discuss that. Actually, I learned all that before signing my own NDA, which I had customized for me or whatever. But since I knew it before, I can talk about it, and that's just not how. It's just not how it worked. I don't know if I can explain how it works. It's inner workings or whatever.
Well, I don't know how it worked back in the early days of TMC versus how it works today.
It's changed a lot of times. Yeah.
It's changed a lot. Yeah.
And that's the thing. A lot of the stuff that maybe people have complained about that have left, all that has changed. People have changed. So it's not the same thing that they point to. This whole enterprise is completely different than it was back then. It's run by different people. Scion did not run TMC until November-ish or September. Before that, it was other people.
Yeah, we've had a string of editors-in-chief before that. There have been, I believe, 3 in the last year and a bit. For various reasons, it has not worked out. It is not because they've been fired for political reasons. It has been due to either personal commitment, changes in life, and otherwise just other things happening. And we're a volunteer organization, and that's completely fine when that happens.
Yeah, I think nonprofits, you may have to sign NDAs, even though there's no profit or anything. But the NDAs aren't to keep you quiet and clamp you down. It's to protect people that they deal with as well. As you know, TMC deals with other gaming companies. There's financials that are talked about in the open. And so any of that stuff is to protect those companies. You can't be letting some editor who's mad at his own teammates in the game go and spill the beans on that kind of a business transaction. That would be irresponsible. So that's what the NDA is for. And even though it's a volunteer enterprise.
Yeah, I just want to respond to somebody. Critical Max said this is effing pathetic to even suggest that TMC is somehow unbiased or holier than the other websites because they don't take sponsorship from betting sites. I don't think that there's anybody here who's saying that it's unbiased or that they are biased because of those things. There is bias across all of these things, but I don't believe that it is a bias that is driven by anything other than they've all got volunteer writers who want to write what they want to write about.
How much ISK a month?
Does it
Matterall?
fucking matter if they're biased?
Ad?
I mean, who gives a shit? Maybe they want to control the narrative.
It's not. It's
as an unbiased author, as human beings, and as people that are passionate about this silly internet spaceship game, we all come with our own baggage, and we all come with things that we like and what we don't write. It's a volunteer organization, and while we are not in the habit of publishing anything that is needlessly inflammatory or otherwise pointlessly biased, it would also be very unproductive to deny that things are written from a point of view, whether that's people writing a battle report from people that they were involved in, or whether it's people talking about, well, hell, just look at what Lember's been doing. He's been doing a whole lot of stuff that has been annoying the pulp out of the Imperium out of game, but we took him back on as a writer because, yeah, he just produces good content, and that's what matters to us at an editorial level.
No, I mean, it's definitely changed. You know, definitely starting to put on, you know, starting to look like a legitimate independent source now. That, especially the last 3 or 4 days.
Yeah, I want to point out one last article, and we are going to wrap it up in just a few minutes. We have somebody coming on after us. He's graciously given us a little more time. I do want to explore one more article, and that is this one here about Goon Rage. And I don't know if you guys read it, but it basically is how true goons are actually really angry at TMC, you know, and the culture that's there. Like, it's not just that the Money Badgers Coalition hates the Imperium. It's kind of like the goons also hate the Imperium. It's the other side of the argument, so we're kind of getting it from both sides. And those 3 articles, the last thing I'll say is those 3 articles, you know, EAPS and the one about IWANTISK, and this one shows you how daring like TMC can become. And we want to like embrace all points of view. We will not publish just stuff that's from the Imperium. We will publish stuff that's against the Imperium, from every direction, but also from the Imperium. It's just stuff that's interesting. That's what we're after. It just has to meet a certain quality, and that's all.
Well,
And that's
I
not
mean,
to say that we're trying
Matterall,
to do some kind of South Park, the truth is in the middle stuff, or like some dumb RPG thing where you put as many evil points in as you do good points, or whatever, to strike some arbitrary ideal of neutrality. It's the content that we are concerned with instead of some kind of grand narrative which we are insulated from.
well,
So-
I think, well, go ahead, finish. My bad.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I wrote for TheMittanidotcom like way back in the day, and obviously a lot of things have changed. The one anecdote that I have from that time was I actually wrote a piece, I can't even remember what it was about, but I was very snide in it. I tried different tones in a lot of my writing, and I had taken up a snide tone, and it was the one time in the history I have ever, of any of my writing, where it's been kicked back. The Mittanidotcom said that it was not, it was too biased, it was too insulting to the person who I was talking about. I don't know if that's a commentary about like whether they've changed or whatnot, but like I think that the Imperium is maybe doing an okay job of trying, or sorry, the Mittanidotcom is maybe trying to do an okay job of like being quote unquote neutral, but you know, when in a fireside chat or whatever it was, the Mittani's like, well, the TMC is just the Imperiums, I'm just going to put the ego logo on it, and then 2 weeks later the ego logo shows up. Like, you no longer can make that claim anymore. You're now the Imperium news site. The leader said it, and it became that way.
Yeah,
By the way,
absolutely a news site for the Imperium community. We are aimed at providing things that people related to the Imperium, who are either members or interested or related to that segment of the population, find interesting. And that's why we've been doing stuff that's not just Eve News. There was an article from Fearless Little Toaster, who is one of our editors who went on hiatus, that was all about coffee. And that's got nothing to do with EVE Online and nothing to do with gaming news itself, really. But it is something that is of interest to the Imperium readers. And Imperium readers aren't here to be fed the propaganda view and the the approved view. They're here to read a variety of viewpoints, and they're here to read what's interesting, and that's what we're here to provide.
Well, so I'll just go ahead and say, I think, Matterall, you mentioned earlier that you finally got full control recently.
Hey, that was pre-show. You can't talk about that.
Oh shit!
No, it's
No,
fine.
I
I'm
thought
just
you
kidding.
said that during the show.
I'm just kidding. It's not. I was kidding.
Honestly, the last 3 or 4 days have been really good articles from both sides, and if I think if the way y'all running it now continues, you'll be in good shape. Like I think y'all put out really good content most of the time, and lately have done it all the time.
to add one thing on this topic, because I've not been saying anything for like a while, is when TMC came out, right? I back in the day I didn't actually know anything because I was not an FC or anything. I was just like a normal member. So I actually had to get all my news from TMC Evenings 24 as well. I actually enjoyed reading TMC way more than Evenings 24 because back in the day I thought they were like not that they were neutral, I guess. But it's just completely changed. And I agree with Progod that in the last couple days, some of the articles that have been released, I looked at them and I was like, I would have never thought this would have been released. Because the last couple of months, and especially since the beginning of this and everything, even though you say you don't want to provide a website that feeds the TMC readers the propaganda that Mittani wants them to read, but it's looking that way. And I mean, just obviously looking at the EVE articles, obviously, right? Like, I mean, all these out of other games articles and stuff, those are a different story. But like I said, last couple days it's been getting good. But like, if you go back in time, I'm a person that whenever you ask me about something, I'm never gonna spin it. I'm always gonna tell you the truth. Like, I'm always gonna tell you what happened where. Like, if you ask me about this super trap of CO2 or whatever they call it, I would tell you the truth about it, right? So, and I can go back on some of these articles on TMC because I actually know what happened there, and I know the reality, and I can list you a list of articles who are all complete bullshit and who are all complete narrative of the Mittani, and that's why I got to the point where I just wouldn't read TMC anymore. But like Progod said, if you keep publishing articles the way you did it in the last couple of days, then that's a cool thing, and I'm definitely going to go back to reading it. But like I'm just saying, like, this is the view I personally had over the last couple of months of TMC. Like, whenever I went there and read an article, it was the complete opposite of what actually happened, spin in the way that Mittani would ping about it, that Mittani would talk about it in his channels and stuff like that.
Just answering a question I read in the chat, someone was asking if people writing for TheMittanidotcom can use World War B, or what happens when editors try to use it, and I sent a comment a few days ago that there is absolutely no editing of people's preferred terminology. I could call it World War Octopus or whatever in an article I'd publish, but it wouldn't be changed or edited to fit the official view.
Yeah, what was released? Ash, go ahead and then I'll go. And then
I was actually about to lead into that. So Matterall, why don't you clarify what was shown about what you said?
Yeah, when I really loved actually reading Progod's comment, I put it in my article as well because I really loved it. Jester's too is kind of funny, and I think it was Saraf actually who said, Saraf Bazarov said, blink twice if you need some help. In other words, are you hostage in there? What's going on with you? Love that stuff. But what was going on with that thread was people were saying, look, Matterall is either a straw man or complicit in this, top-down kind of stuff. And how that developed is also different. It lacked context. And so I'll just tell you right now what happened. Originally, we had authors putting in different names for the war. It was the Easter War. And it wasn't actually World War B. It was before World War B. There was another one that I forget what it was. I mean, nobody settled the name. I guess World War B for now, but it may change later because it's not much of a war. It's more of a... Anyway, the point is that I myself, on my own initiative, came out and said, I'm going to write an article that summarizes all of our coverage, because what had happened was we lost Lemba right when the war started, and he was writing a lot of our stuff for coverage. And I didn't know actually that he was not available until I realized a week later, 2 weeks later, that his stories just weren't coming through. I wasn't told that he was taking leave or anything. So I wrote a summary piece to get everybody caught up on where the war is, where it started, how deep it goes, all the theories, and to cite all the work that we had done and all the big battles, because we did do the big battles. And to do that, I had to call it something, because it was the IWANTISK versus SMA war before that, but this was different because it had more people. So I said, okay, mercenary wars, because all these guys are paid. And then I said to everybody, let's all call this the Mercenary War. That was my own initiative, and it was a mistake, because that's the first time anybody has kind of imposed something. But the reason I did it was just to be consistent. And actually, the reality was you don't need to reference the war. You can just say the war. Let it be defined later.
But if somebody submitted an article to you where whatever their article was, they wrote World War B in there because that's what they wanted to say.
We'll publish it under World War B.
There you go.
But wait, that story. I'm sorry, Matterall. I like you.
I'm not finished yet.
Okay, good. Okay. I was like, that isn't what.
No. So then Mittani gave a speech to his guys to say this is what it is, and he was being attacked by the opposite narrative, thinking that by calling it World War B, it isolated Goonswarm from their allies, because it was saying we're only focused on that guy there, the bees, not you guys, so why don't you break off like CO2 did? He took that as an attack through the media. So his response was, guys, we're going to call this the war of solveless aggression, to tell CCP that people who don't have SOV are the ones that are aggressing and winning this war, to remind them that the SOV system is fizzle-SOV, is broken. That did come down, and that was, hey, call it this. But it was an overriding of the standard that I had already set. And
why can't they attack the same way that they got attacked?
So,
then?
But the point is that it was saying, like, if you're gonna name the war, don't name it the Mercenary War, name it this, and that's what that was.
So what you're saying, just to get this clear, and once again, and we keep saying this, Matterall, we do like you, but at the same time, like, so what you're saying is that did come down from up top, Mittani and Scion, but the posting of the Florida IWANTISK legal thing did not come from up top.
Exactly.
Because you said they don't have that kind of interaction, but then you give us an example where they do have that kind of interaction, and it's
yes.
Yeah,
let me
wait,
Matterall,
let me do the blink
this.
twice thing. Like, people know that you're good. You're a good man, and they think you're covering up for them just because you're a good man.
I'll let Ash go, then I'll answer.
So there's a significant difference between the leadership of an organization coming down and calling an executive privilege effectively among a group, and the expectation that every single article that's published is looked at by the head command. Like, those two things are two totally different things. Like, I completely believe that the Mittani, because he has control of it, can just say overriding, no, you're going to call it the War of Selfless Aggression. I also completely believe that an article, even an article of this level, could go without being actually looked at and checked off by the head dude. Because that's just not how it works. The Mittani's like off on yachts and shit. He's not looking at every single article that comes across.
That was 6 guys on vacation together in Mexico. It's not something I would have ever done, but these guys did it. It's not like they're using they did it all on their own money. Like, I don't know why it has anything to do with it. But anyway, the point is,
my question is, how do we get from coming down from on high, you will use solveless aggression, to what we just heard right now, which is that anybody can use anything they want. So
so it evolved past this point, and that was, look, let's just let them name it the way they want to name it. If there is a default, it'll be the war, or it'll be, but if they name it, they can name it. If they don't name it and it needs to be named, we just call it the war, or we call it the War of Solveless Aggression.
What happened is that after it was either Mittens himself or it was Scion who sent out a group ping in TMC Slack saying, hey, look, this is our preferred nomenclature for the war. What happened is I took an article that was submitted, it was a battle report, and I held it saying, hey, look, are you really sure that this is the right interpretation of what we're doing here? Like, is this something that from the top down we are saying is a must for what we're using, or is it just a suggestion? And when clarification came back that it was a suggestion, I made sure that the original war name that the author used was in there before publishing it. This did mean a little bit of a delay, but ultimately the leaked screenshot that people were parading around as a kind of Matterall blink twice if you are being held at gunpoint kind of thing, it lacks a lot of context, and it absolutely lacks all of the background stuff that was going on.
But that's...
And because I'm just so insulated from, I suppose, the public-facing side of things, because I do a lot of work on the back end, it's frustrating because there is never the whole story that you can capture in a single screenshot.
Well, I think that's the reason why we're asking the questions now, right?
Yeah, get this out in the open, and I'm happy to do it. I just want to answer Progod, and then we'll wrap it up. And that is, you're right. There is, on one hand, I'm saying, look, executives don't tell me how to pick the stories and how to publish the content. On that instance, they actually did, because there was a lot of trouble kind of getting around. This whole thing is really weird, right? We're kind of supposed to be acting like a business and performing like a business. You can tell how professional Rayn is. None of these guys have axes to grind. They just want to do a good job. We're all like trying to do a good job for EVE readers. That's what we care about. And we're also funded by, not a casino, but yes, we're funded by an organization in the game that makes its money in the game. And they have their political agenda. They have their own propaganda wing that has nothing to do with us. That's where all that stuff gets made or whatever. Sometimes, and especially in war, there's confusion about what we're supposed to do, and we're learning as we go. And so that one was, hey, if you're going to put a story out, put it out like this. And that may have been Mittani saying that out loud and Sion saying, okay, we'll do it, or whatever. I don't know what happened. I just know that it came from above. As far as IWANTISK, that story came in as a submission. It never surfaced. It never got surfaced to Mittani that, hey, we got this great story that's going to blow the cover of whatever. That didn't happen. Mittani spends all his hours focusing on the war, not the content. But Sion, because he's there and he's a director of content, it is his job to look at stuff as well. And I and the editors had discussions about this stuff. So that's where a lot of the discussion about should it go, shouldn't it go. And I can just tell you, Sion is a great guy. You guys treat him.
I know he is. I was on the CSM with him. We got along just fine.
Yeah, he's a great guy, and I don't want to have to be his character witness or anything. You guys will have to discover that on your own. There's a lot of suspicion towards him. And his thing is, like, let's be bold, and let's not be afraid of the timing. Let's not be afraid of the stuff. That's the kind of, like, decision-making that was going on. It blew up in our face or whatever, but we always intended to give the other side. So we weren't worried about it.
I believe you. I do believe you. And I think y'all have realized your mistake. And, I think y'all have actually done a lot of steps to correct it and just picked a new direction. It's actually really interesting over the past 3 or 4 days. And I think if y'all continue on that route, y'all will be in good shape. I mean, not that you aren't already, but yeah.
All right, last comment.
I would disagree that it's a new direction. The Mittanidotcom, as far as I know, along with Eve News 24, Crossing Zebra, they want content. If you want to put content on there that calls the Mittani, some terrible name, or put together a rational article, and they'll print it.
It's true. I also want to throw out there, Matterall, like, it is incredibly big of you to, in spite of all of that, come out here and face the fire. So good on you.
Well, listen, if anybody has...
yeah, man, I got a lot of respect for you for it.
Well, if anybody has big balls, it's Baculus there. And what's your name in Latin?
It's Latin for dick.
Perfect. We'll leave it there. All right, everybody, thanks for showing up. We're going to pass it on to the drunk Canadian. And he's playing a game called... Keep Talking and Nobody Explodes. So stay tuned for him, and thank you very much for watching.